I am Job, and this is my story. The morning it began was like 10,000 mornings before it. I remember the smell, dust warmed by early sun, the sour-sweet breath of the oxen as they lined up for the plow, the bleating of sheep, so many I had long since stopped counting them one by one and simply thanked God for the sound of it. I lived in the land of Uz, and men said of me that I was the greatest of all the people of the East. I did not say it of myself. I only knew that when I rose before dawn, I rose to offer burnt offerings for my sons and daughters, one for each of them, in case any had sinned in their hearts during the feasting of the night before. That was the shape of my life, abundance, and the careful, trembling stewardship of it. I had 7 sons and 3 daughters. I want you to understand what that means to a father before I tell you what happened, because a number is nothing until you have heard a son laugh, until you have watched a daughter braid her sister's hair in the lamplight and argue about whose turn it was to pour the wine. My children feasted together in each other's houses, taking turns, and they always sent for their sisters to join them. I used to stand in my doorway some evenings and simply listen to the sound of my household rising up like smoke into the hills. Flutes, laughter, the low voices of my sons blessing the meal. I thought, surely this is what a full life sounds like. I did not know a man could go deaf to that sound and never hear it again. I did not know, either, that in a place beyond the sky I could not see, my name had been spoken. I did not know that the accuser had stood before the Lord and said I served God only because God had built a hedge around me, around my house, around everything I owned, that take it all away, and I would curse him to his face. I did not know the Lord had answered, "Behold, all that he has is in your power." I knew none of this. I only knew that on an ordinary afternoon, my quiet was broken by running feet. A servant came first, chest heaving, robe torn already, torn before he reached me, which told me something before he spoke a word. The oxen were plowing, he gasped, and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them. They have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. I had not yet risen from my seat when a second man stumbled through my gate. The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Fire from heaven. I remember thinking, absurdly, that is not how fire behaves. As if my mind could hold on to small, ordinary logic while the ground opened beneath it. A third came before the second had finished speaking. The Chaldeans formed 3 companies and made a raid on the camels and took them and killed the servants, and I alone have escaped to tell you. 3 losses in the space it takes a man to draw 3 breaths. I remember my hands. I looked down at them as if they belonged to someone else. And then the 4th messenger came, and something in the way he would not meet my eyes told me before his mouth opened that this one would take the ground out from under me entirely. Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. And it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you. I have tried, in the years since, to find words for what happens inside a man in that moment, and I have never found them. There is a kind of grief too large for the chest that holds it, and it does not arrive as sound. It arrived in me as silence. a silence so total that I could hear my own heart, stupidly, stubbornly still beating, as though it had not been told the news. I rose, I tore my robe, I shaved my head, the way we do when the body itself must show what the soul has suffered, and then I fell to the ground. I want you to know what I said, because men have repeated it since as though it were easy, as though it did not cost me everything I had left to say it. I said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." I did not sin, nor did I charge God with wrong. I want that remembered above everything else, not because I was strong, but because in the wreckage of that hour, some deeper root held. I did not yet know how deep that root would be tested. The second blow did not come for my wealth, for there was none left to take. It came for my body. I woke one morning with a soreness in my skin, and by that evening I did not recognize my own hands. Loathsome sores broke out over me from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet, until I took a piece of broken pottery to scrape myself as I sat among the ashes outside the city. For that is where a man like me now belonged, among the ash heaps, apart from clean things. The itching was a torment beyond describing, and beneath the itching was a deeper pain, and beneath that pain, deeper still, the ache of a father who could no longer even weep at his children's graves without his own body screaming for attention. My wife, who had also lost every child she bore, looked at me one evening, my skin cracked and weeping, and she said the words that still cut me sharper than anything the accuser did directly. "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." I understood her. I did not condemn her for it. Grief makes different wounds in different people, and hers had curdled into despair while mine had not yet found its shape. But I answered her, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all this, I did not sin with my lips. I want to be honest with you, though. Not sinning with my lips did not mean my heart was quiet. There were nights I lay in the ash and asked why I had ever been born at all, why breath had not simply been withheld from me at birth. I was not pretending strength I did not feel. I was simply refusing, even in the dark, to let go of the one thing left in my hands, the truth of who God was, even when I could no longer feel him near. Then my friends came, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, and when they saw me from a distance, they did not at first recognize me. They raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes, and they sat with me on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to me, for they saw that my suffering was very great. I will tell you, of all the mercies of that season, those 7 silent days were among the greatest. I did not need answers yet. I needed presence. It did not last. When at last I opened my mouth and cursed the day of my birth, not cursing God, but cursing the day, the way a drowning man curses the water without cursing the sea itself, my friends could bear silence no longer. One by one they rose to explain me to myself. Eliphaz spoke gently at first, then less gently. "Surely," he said, "the innocent do not perish. Whoever plows iniquity reaps the same." Bildad was blunter still. My children must have sinned, and God had merely given them what their own hands had earned. Zophar was the sharpest of all. "I deserved less than my guilt," he said, "and should be grateful God had not punished me further." I want you to understand what it is to grieve while also defending your own soul. Each of them meant, I believe, to comfort me, but comfort wrapped in accusation is no comfort at all. I said to them, "Miserable comforters are you all." I did not have a hidden sin to confess, and I would not lie and invent one merely to make my suffering make sense to them. I maintained my integrity, and I would not let it go, even as the weight of their words pressed down alongside my sores. And yet, even in defending myself, I never stopped speaking to God directly, honestly, sometimes furiously. I demanded an audience with Him. I said things I do not think a lesser faith would have dared to say, that I wished to lay my case before Him, that I longed to find Him and come even to His seat. This was not rebellion, it was the opposite. A man who has stopped believing does not bother arguing with heaven. I argued because some unquenchable ember in me still believed God was listening and still worth pleading with, even from the ash heap. In my darkest hour, I said words I did not fully understand myself until much later. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last He will stand upon the earth. I did not know how that hope would be fulfilled. I only knew I could not release it. A younger man, Elihu, spoke after my 3 friends fell silent, angry both at them for condemning me without answer and at me for justifying myself above God. His words were not gentle either, but they turned my eyes higher, toward the greatness of God rather than the arithmetic of blame. And then, after all my friends had spoken, after all my own bitter words had been spent, the Lord answered me out of the whirlwind. I do not have words worthy of that moment, though I have spent years trying to find them. The sky itself seemed to lean down. His voice did not accuse me the way my friends had. It did something far more overwhelming. It asked me questions I could never answer. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" He asked me of the morning stars singing together, of the storehouses of snow, of the wild ox and the ostrich and the horse who laughs at fear, of Leviathan whom no man can tame. Question after question, not to shame me, but to show me the size of the one I had been arguing with, and the smallness, not of my grief, which He never despised, but of my ability to comprehend the whole of His purposes. I had demanded answers. What I received instead was God Himself, and it was enough, more than enough. I said to Him, "I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." Not because I had sinned as my friends claimed, but because I had spoken of things too wonderful for me, things I did not know. There is a difference between an innocent man and a man who has fully understood the size of God. I became, in that whirlwind, the second kind of man. The Lord rebuked my 3 friends, not me, for they had not spoken of Him what was right, as I had. He told them to bring offerings, and that I would pray for them, and He would accept my prayer and not deal with them according to their folly. Imagine that the man on the ash heap should become the intercessor for the men who had wounded him there. Grace does not always arrive the way we expect it to. And then the Lord restored my fortunes. He gave me twice what I had before: 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 donkeys. My brothers and sisters and everyone who had known me came and ate bread with me in my house and comforted me, and each gave me a piece of money and a ring of gold. I had 7 sons again and 3 daughters, and I will tell you, no daughters in all the land were found so beautiful as mine. and I gave them an inheritance among their brothers, which was not the custom, but I had learned by then not to hold back what love wished to give. I lived 140 years after that, and saw my children and their children 4 generations, and then I died, old and full of days. But I want to leave you with this, because the sheep and the sons were not the true restoration. They were only its evidence. The true restoration happened in the ash heap, long before the herds returned. In the moment I stopped needing God to explain himself and simply let him be God. I learned that faith is not the absence of questions. I shouted mine into a silent sky for weeks before heaven answered. Faith is refusing to let go of him, even when his hand seems hidden, even when your friends misread your pain as punishment, even when your own heart cannot make sense of what it is carrying. I did not curse God, not because I never wanted to, but because I had tasted him too many mornings of my life to believe the ash heap was the whole truth about who he was. If you are in your own ash heap tonight, if the messengers keep coming one after another before you have caught your breath from the last, I will tell you what I wish someone had whispered to me on the worst of those nights. The story is not finished while you are still in the middle of it. Grieve honestly. Question him honestly. But do not curse the God who gave you breath, for the same hand that permits the storm is the hand that walks with you inside it, and the whirlwind that seems to threaten you may be the very voice about to answer you. The Lord gave, and the Lord took away. And in his time, the Lord gave again. If you have been blessed by this story, subscribe, like, and share it with a friend.